You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. Folks, earlier today I got a chance to talk with Lee Saunders, who is the president of the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, which has a number of police officers under their particular banner. We talked about police reform and what needs to happen. Here is our conversation. Here, the Senate, Democrats blocked the Senate police reform bill. Democrats voting today on the House bill, clearly at an impasse. You represent with your union, there are police officers, under your domain as well. How do we get to the point of achieving bipartisan police reform?
Well, first of all, I think we've got to honestly and seriously recognize the problem. And the problem is that we've had systemic racism in this country for many, many, many years, and it is not improving. And it's not just in the police, with the police. It's also with employment, with health, as far as the impact that has on African-American families. And we've just got to deal with this crisis. And it is a crisis. And people are fed up. They're angry. They're frustrated. I can understand that. I'm angry and frustrated. And we've got to have a dialogue that makes sense with everybody, bringing everybody to the table and recognizing the issues and coming up with some very valid solutions. I got to tell you, Roland, I am tired of having these task forces and the committees and the conferences that take place, and then nothing happens. I mean, this is a moment in time where something has got to happen, and we have got to address the issue of systemic racism.
So, but with that, I mean, right now, I mean, with the murder of George Floyd, it is such a flashpoint when it comes to police. And look, there've been lots of discussion about police unions, folks saying those contracts, qualified immunity, all these different things, chokeholds, you name it. People are saying defund the police. And so, again, at some point, there has to be a compromise. There has to be solutions. And so what is AFSCME putting forth, or what do you want to see done so that we actually achieve that?
Well, we believe that we came out with a resolution in 2018 based upon discussions that we had with our community activists within our union who are members of AFSCME, along with our law enforcement, police officers, corrections officers, probation officers. And we had some very deep discussions about what we needed to do. The first thing is, and I don't use the term defund police, but I honestly believe that resources should be reallocated within the department and outside of the department. Since the Great Recession, we have not seen the levels of public service employees rising to where it was before that Great Recession. If, in fact, you reallocate funds from the police department and say, for example, provide more money to social workers, child protective workers, those kinds of folks who can do the job that police are doing right now, it frees them up. And it gives a more human touch to dealing with people that have issues and problems in our communities. I think chokeholds need to be banned. I think that sometimes you've got to take decisions that the prosecutor makes and take it out of his or her hands, and maybe the attorney general has got to get directly more involved. So there are a variety of issues that we've got to talk about. President Obama's task force had many recommendations that were never implemented. And I think that's a start. The House bill has a number of those recommendations built in to their bill, and there's going to have to be some kind of compromise, obviously. But I'm going back to the point where we've got to do something about systemic racism in this country. And it involves healthcare, it involves housing, it involves police, it involves law enforcement, it involves jobs and economic fairness for African Americans and people of color.
One of the things that we keep hearing from folks is that on this whole issue, people say, you got a few bad apples. But part of the deal also here, this is where I argue you also have to have police accountability. When you look at what happened in the case of George Floyd, if an officer had went over and said, man, get off of his neck, Okay, then all of a sudden that changes the whole deal. When you had there was a case out of Los Angeles where this guy was just wailing against the dude, and the other officer, she's just standing there, and then when the body cam footage, I mean, you comes out and you hear what he was saying, and it's like example after example. But part of the problem is where you've had cops who've done it in the past, they've been ostracized, and so at some point you've got to have police on police accountability, and not have this deal to, oh, how dare you fire people or suspend them, and now we're going to do a slowdown, or we're going to get upset and we're going to, resign en masse like in Buffalo or the SWAT team in Florida. I mean, I think the public also needs to see that from police.
I agree, and what's right is right, and what's wrong is wrong. And if police see something that's happening that is not right, that is risking someone's life, that is way over the top as far as how they're dealing with folks, they've got to speak up. They've got to talk about it. Let me go back to one point, Roland, and I want to be clear on this. And I honestly believe that police should have the ability to be represented by a union if they so choose. Everybody is entitled to due process, but the contract that's negotiated cannot be used as a shield for bad behavior. And we've got to deal with that. And management has got to deal with that. Elected officials have got to deal with that. And at times they're going to have to take that issue on, whether it may be uncomfortable or not. They're going to have to deal with it. They're going to have to take it on. I think unions have a responsibility also as far as bringing people together around that same table and talking about it and educating folks, educating our members about systemic racism in this country, what it's meant to African Americans through so many years. And we want to do that. The way that we do that is to have folks at the table talking about it. But then once we decide on a plan of action, we move forward very, very quickly.
Well, it's interesting you say that. I remember there was a particular story I was reading in SAG-AFTRA. You talk about, a fellow union out of Hollywood. They called on police unions to change, or they said, quote, lose all support. I mean, so here's a union who is saying, look, you're a union, we're a union, but you're going to have to make some changes in order to get the trust of the public. That's why I go back to accountability, because you have some people who are saying, get rid of the police unions. Then you have people who are union supporters who say, no, we can't do that because we also believe in unions. So then it's like, okay, how do you fix the problem? And that's really, I think, where when I look at what SAG-AFTRA said, what they're saying, you have to deal with the problem and not act like a problem doesn't exist.
No question. And we all know that there is a problem. We know that. We cannot run away from that fact. People can deny it. They can try to run away from it, but we've got a serious problem in this country that's got to be dealt with. And we've got to bring people together to sit down and talk about it, but most importantly, put those plans and put what was decided upon in those meetings into action that makes sense, so we don't have to continue to deal with these killings that are taking place all across the country, and brutality that's happening, and the economic injustice, the healthcare inadequacies within the African American community, housing issues, public education issues. This is the moment, this is the time to put all of this on the table and seriously deal with it, come up with solutions, and move this country forward.
Right now, the real block is that you have this call for ban on police chokeholds, ban on no-knock warrants, and ending qualified immunity. Are those three things, that right now is the block on Capitol Hill. Whereas you have Democrats who say those three things must be a part of police reform. Then you have Senator Tim Scott's bill. It does not include qualified immunity, but he says does indeed lead to the ban of chokeholds and no-knock warrants. Do you see that being resolved? Because Democrats are saying, we don't care. If those three things are not in the bill, there will be no bill going forward.
I think that the no-knock warrants and the ban of chokeholds really have got to be dealt with in some kind of way. QI, which I call QI, qualified immunity, really has to be looked at and studied. It's very, very complicated. All public employees, all public sector workers have qualified immunity based upon the jobs that they do. And you're putting many in jeopardy if you're talking about getting rid of qualified immunity. I understand the sensitivities associated with that, but we want to sit down and talk about alternatives and talk about ways in which we can deal with that we get to the same place that people want to get to. But overall, we know and we believe that there needs to be fundamental and serious changes that take place in order to resolve the kinds of problems that we've been dealing with for so many years.
All right, Lee Saunders, President of AFSCME. We certainly appreciate it. Thank you so very much.
Thanks for having me, Roland.
This is where, Greg, black union leaders are going to be so important, because folks like Lee Saunders, and let me also say AFSCME, full disclosure, they're a partner, supporter of this show. They can serve a vital role when it comes to dealing with this whole issue, because when you talk, and also not just black union leaders, but also black folk groups like Noble. This is where our black organizations have a seat at the table, where you traditionally are talking to white police leaders and saying, no, we know these issues. There's a problem here. Y'all got to be a part of the solution.
Absolutely, and appreciate Brother Saunders for his nuanced reading of what has been a long-term difficulty for people of African descent in this country. We know that the ownership class, the so-called elites, the ruling class, so to speak, have always worked against labor. And it was the birth of organized labor in the 19th century that saw the real pushback. Of course, had people of African descent, had poor whites been able to marry with blacks during the early days of organized labor, we wouldn't be in some of the messes we are in today. But it was racism that always lay at the heart of organized labor. And we know that, of course, you've talked many times about A. Philip Randolph and his Brotherhood of Student Car Porters and Chambermaids, so forth and so on, AFL-CIO. But here we are in 2020. So when you see a Lee Saunders, you're looking, or Bill Lucy, you're looking at figures who are black, who are going to advocate for black folk, and who are doing it through the power of organized labor. There are many unions in AFSCME, AFL-CIO, organized labor, who detest the racist behavior of many of these police unions. So what we have an opportunity finally to do here is not only lead from a moral principle, not only organize around the idea of black strength, but to finally join forces with those other folks who are like, you are not only giving unions a bad name, you are maintaining this white nationalist attitude that ultimately works against organized labor. So, kudos to Lee Saunders, because that's a difficult needle to thread, brother.
Reese.
Yeah, and I think that, one of the ways that the police unions have been shielded is by attaching themselves to the labor movement and, being able to kind of successfully convince people that an attack on police unions is an attack on all unions. So it's really important for people like Lee Saunders and other labor union leaders to come out and actually be on the side of policing reform and divorce to a certain extent a little bit that kind of connection that people tried to make. And I think to Lee Saunders' point when he talked about how qualified immunity all public employees have it to a certain extent, certainly nothing that the Democrats are suggesting will lead to eliminating qualified immunity for all public employees. It's just not, it's saying you don't have qualified immunity to go out there and kill black people. So I didn't entirely agree with his point on that one, but I understand his concern.
Erica.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think that it is important for someone like a Lee Saunders to be able to have this very nuanced conversation, understanding that QI, as he put it, does cover government officials. But then I also think it's very important to parse through that police unions also have the backing of the benevolent officers, that particular group. They also have the Fraternal Order of Police Union as well. So they do have a lot of support that really kind of makes them a lot more louder in the way that they're able to exercise their ability to do the things that really do harm public. But I definitely agree with Dr. Carr and Reese that it is of the utmost importance to have somebody who understands and has the depth to be able to have this nuanced conversation and to really lead us into a place where the reforms that we're looking for will be the ones that we'll actually see.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment. All right, fam, the folks at Ceek.com, founded by Mary Spio, a sister, of course, She is the inventor, the creator of these devices, this virtual reality headset right here. You saw it in the video there. And also the 360-degree 4D headphones. You can actually get these with a discount because they partner with us at Roland Martin Unfiltered. Right here, here's the code, RMVIP2020, RMVIP2020. First of all, folks, the headsets are phenomenal. The headphones are absolutely phenomenal. And of course, the VR headset is great because you just pop your phone, put it into the device, and then you can actually see video in virtual reality. So it's real cool. Go to Ceek.com, 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 and use the promo code RMVIP2020.